All right, welcome to another video with CodePath at TCU's Intro to Web Dev course. In this video, I'm going to be working through one of our assignments, second assignment for our students to learn how to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build a very simple IMDb clone website. So in this video, I will just be going through the assignment instructions that I have created, so that we will get through this assignment and build out this website for our students to add to their portfolio and submit it, and learn these practical skills of using JavaScript to make use of an API to build a website. So overview. In this project, you will create your own version of IMDb using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Functionally, this website will display a list of movies that are now playing in theaters and allow the user to search for movies by the movie name. Very simple, just a bare minimum website, or you could say an MVP, a minimum viable product for basically a website like IMDb, right? You want to be able to look for movies, find its movie name, and then find its rating so that you can find interesting movies and then go and research more about it. In terms of the UI design, we will model after the actual IMDb website, which is very simple search bar, and then we will skip all of this fancy stuff, but just basically build like a grid that we are able to see, and also without some of these complicated things such as save a movie or finding watch options. Only the movie poster, rating, and title. Very simple. All right. And the learning objectives for these assignment is that the student will be able to learn the mechanics of displaying dynamic data on a web page. Because last week they learned to use HTML and CSS to build a personal website, but that was a static website. And this week we're going to build a dynamic website. The students will learn to use an API to query for data and manipulate them based on your use case. So with this project, we're going to be using the movie database API, which basically presents us all the information that we will need to to display a movie title, a rating, and a poster. And the movie database API is easier than the IMDb API to use, so I chose to use that for this project. The students will write JavaScript code to dynamically generate, display, and replace HTML elements. So this is something new. The students are going to use JavaScript to create HTML elements and then insert those into other HTML elements so that information or data can pop up and be displayed on a web page based on user behavior. So the core features for this assignment, you need to have at least a search bar and a movie script. And the movie script, actually, there would be another one, which is movie categories title, which is just if the user is viewing movies that are currently now playing, or if the user is viewing their search results, so that they can get a good idea of what they're looking at. The website will display a grid of movies now playing in theaters when the page is first loaded. And for each movie, you create a movie card, which is just a div tag that displays these items, the movie poster, title, and rating. The website will display the search result when the user searches for a movie. And with the website, the students will display demonstrate CSS styling on various elements, including the background colors of the website, images, text, positioning, such as the layout of the movie grid and how they come together when there's multiple movie cards. And a couple of stretch features that we might not go through. I might implement one of these during this video, even though it's not included in the assignment instructions, which is for the user to be able to click on the movie card and then be redirected to that movie's IMDb page, which wouldn't be very difficult and will make the website a lot more robust than without it. So quick demo first. This is a complete example of the assignment website. It's very basic, but it looks decent. And the user cannot click on the movie, but they're able to see the movie title, poster, rating, and the user will be able to search for any movies and be able to see the same information. And that is it. And I also implemented an extra step of allowing the user to click the I guess the logo to go back to the main page. So that's it for the overview. And within our course portal, there's also useful resources for people to learn a little bit more about some of these concepts. So step 0, starting from 0 because we're programmers, you need to first create a TMDB account, which is the movie database account, and get an API key. I will put a link in the description to allow you to go to their website. So first of all, you need to sign up for an account using your email, and then verify the account, and then sign in. So once you create your account with the movie database, you can go to settings, and then API, and then you will be able to find your API key. I want you to save this somewhere that you will be able to refer to so that you can use this and then make API requests. And this is an example API request. It's just allowing you to request a certain type of data, and then your API key will always be included in the API request. So when you have a URL for an API request, what you can do is that you can copy and paste it into the search bar and be able to see the result that you're getting. So over here, we can see that we have some data about Fight Club, which is because that this example request is just requesting for, I suppose, movie ID 550, and it returns all the data that they have about this movie. And when you paste it into the URL or the address bar, it will not look like mine. It looks like this because I have an extension installed called JSON view. So that actually helps you be able to see all the data a lot more easily. But that won't be completely necessary. So you will click API and developer, and then accept their terms of use. And this one clause within their terms of use is actually important to pay attention to make sure that we comply with them and to avoid any further issues. So fill out the application form that you see with this information. And then that's pretty much it. Now, step 1, before we get started building our IMDb, IMDb website, check off each of these items and complete them if you haven't already, which is that you need to download VS Code on your computer. You need to download Git and create a GitHub account if you don't already have one. And you will be able to, if you haven't already, the link to the course portal will be in the description. You should be able to go to our course portal, follow these links, and then do so step by step. Next, you will need to create a new repository on GitHub. So I'm just going to go to this link. And for me, I already have an IMDb repository, but I'm just going to make another one, and I will call it IMDb clone. And then for the description, it's optional, but I will just write a simple IMDb clone website built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And keep your repository public unless you will like it to be private for any particular reason. But keep it public if you are a student in my course and you need to submit it. Include a README file for your repository as well. A README file is always great for a repository to have, so that people can read the README file and see a description for your project, for people to know what they're looking at when they look at your repository. Now, you can create a repository. And after your repository is created, you can clone your repository to your local machine, which is just taking this project from GitHub down to your computer. You will click code right here, and then click open with GitHub Desktop. If you don't have GitHub Desktop downloaded and installed already, it will prompt you to download it right here later after you click this. So just follow their steps, and then you will be able to download it and install it. So I already have GitHub Desktop installed, and I'm just going to click this. Now you will be taken to this prompt. You can just click clone. And now this project will basically be on your computer. And we can also look at it. If you do show in Explorer, you'll see that this project is now in your computer. But right now there's nothing besides this file only. That's okay. Click open in Visual Studio Code so we can get started. So now, once you have downloaded and installed VS Code, you should be able to you should be taken to this page, and we can get started building the building blocks of the web page. Now, step 2. First, we're going to create a new file and name it index.html in your project folder. You can do so by right-clicking on the pane on the left right here in the Explorer, and then create a new file called index.html. Okay, and then type exclamation mark into it, and then press enter. This will create a basic building blocks of the HTML page. And as you can see, once I did Control S and save the file, it automatically formats, which is because I installed an extension called Prettier. This is a VS Code extension that will help you format your code. And once you install this extension, and then if you were to go to the settings and then find format on save, it will help you format your code every time you save it, which is very convenient. Okay, so next, create another file and name it style.css, then link it to your HTML file. And we're going to do it in the same way, style.css. And then once this file is created, it's fine if it's empty. We're going to link it to our HTML file, which is by typing link. And you can just type the name of a file, style.css. And once you have these two files will be linked. And next, create one more file in your project folder and name it script.js, then link it to your HTML file as well. You can do so by adding this into the body, which is just this line of code. First, I'm going to create a file, script.js. Okay, it's also fine if it's empty. Then I'm just going to add that line into the code, and that's it. Now all of these files are connected. I can test it by writing these alerts, which will create a lot alerts prompts for the web page when the web page is loaded. I'm going to say hello world. And now if you want to preview the web page, we can use an extension called live preview. This is the extension that I prefer to use to preview web pages as we are in development. This one right here, once you install it, is fairly easy to use. I can do Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac, and then do external browser. And now we'll see that the alert that I did is showing. So now we know that our script.js file is linked with the index.html. Okay, so next, we can start building our web page. We start by creating two div elements in the body of our HTML file. We're just gonna do two divs, and one of them is going to be called the ID is going to be search bar. That's going to be representing our search bar. And then the next one. And here is a shorthand for I think IMDb abbreviation. You can do div ID. Then you that's actually not, that's actually wrong. You can do div home movie script. There we go. That notation will automatically give it an ID of whatever you typed after the pound sign, because the pound sign represents ID for the HTML elements. Now we have this. And then really quick, we're going to add contents into the search bar. We will use the form element to create our search bar. This element will help us use JavaScript to execute a search when a user searches for something. Okay, I'm just going to create that in here. Okay. Now there is a default action attribute. We won't need that right away. And then we'll just give it an ID of search form as well. Okay. Inside the form element, add an input element. This will allow the user to type into it and detects when the user presses enter to do a search. So we're going to expand this, and then we're going to create an input element. Input type will be text, and ID will be search input. And then we can also give it a placeholder with something like search IMDb. Okay. All right. So after this step, let's preview our web page again. I'm going to do Ctrl+Shift+P. And now you can see that we have a search very simple input right here, input element that has a placeholder, search IMDb. You can type something into it and the placeholder will disappear. All right, now let's go to step 4. And now that your HTML file has been set up, you can query for movie data to be displayed. Firstly, to request the movie data, you need to set up the API call. In your script.js file, create 2 variables and store the API-based URL and your own API key. So with the API key that you got from over here, you can just copy that and then create a variable called API key, const API key, to add that into your script.js file. And we're using const right here because this is a variable that we will not be modifying. So it's best practice to always use const, which represents constant for variables that are storing values that won't be changed. Even though theoretically the code will work just fine if you were to use lets or even bar, but it's always best practice to use const when you can. And you can definitely research more about that and look into the differences between const and let. Okay, and then we also need an API-based URL. This API-based URL, as you can see, is right here. And you can look at their API documentation one more time. Actually, you can go into that. From here, the movie database, the moviedb.org website, you can actually go into API, okay, and then developers, and then see their documentation. So for any given, I guess from here, let's just say movies, for any given request that you want to make, it will always have just this partial URL right here that you can have. So suppose you go into the try it out and then they give you a URL to use to try their API. There will always be this right here. This is the base URL that I have so that you can append different kinds of requests to this base URL. So we're gonna add that. We're gonna add that as well. We're just gonna have const API URL close. Right. Next, define an async function to perform the API call. You can copy this code block into your script.js file. So let's just do that. And then I'll explain a little bit of what it does. So line by line, this code defines a function that fetches the data, which is, as you can see right here, this line defining the function. Async is just a notation for, specifying that a particular function will have a kind of behavior that is asynchronous, meaning that it's going to do something that it needs to await. Async and await, they are two keywords that go with the other every time. So this is what we need to await right here, which is actually fetching the data from their API, because it might take time. So while it's awaiting this response, it's not going to execute the rest of these lines until this has been fulfilled, right? Because if the code were to just execute instantly, and before this is fulfilled, it tries to do something else to the response, it's going to create an error. So this response variable takes the result from this API request, stores it into response, and then we are converting this response into JSON format. And then we store it into JSON response. And then within this JSON response, we will have different types of attributes or properties. So we're just going to access the results to get a list of movies. So once we log that into the console, we'll be able to see what we have. So I'm just going to preview again. I'm already previewing. I'm already started the server, so I can just go back. Okay, run it on the different ports. There we go. So if you're on Chrome, you can do inspect, right-click inspect, and then see the console. You actually need to code the function, right? You need to add at the end of your script.js file, add another line of code to execute this function, because this function was just defined, but it needs to be executed. So now, if I refresh the page, you can see that there is a list of objects right here. And if we expand one of them, we'll see that, okay, this is a movie. The first movie title is Orphan, First Kill. Second one is Fall. So we have a list of 20 movies that we can display. Okay, so now we have those, we can actually display them. As you can see, the JSON response includes a key named poster path, right? Right here, every single movie has a poster path, right? This points to a JPG file, which is stored somewhere out there in their database. So if we use that, we can see the movie poster as well. Okay. However, these image paths are incomplete, and we need to add them to their base URL. So to define the image base URL, add this line to your code, and we'll just do that. And we'll define it right here. Since this is another constant variable, it's best to keep them all in one place. Just keeps your code more organized. So with the image base URL, you can copy and paste it into the browser's address and add any of the poster path from the API response to see the posters. So let's try with one of them. We have this base URL, and I'm gonna take one random movie poster, We have DCB with the super bits. I'm going to copy these, paste it. And now I can see the movie poster just like that. So we're basically just going to do this with every single movie with our code and display them on our web page. Now that we can make up the proper image paths, we can later generate multiple image elements and give them the proper source values to display the images. So first, we need to define a new constant variable called movies grid. This way we can reference the movies grid element that we created in the HTML file and add more content to it. We'll use document.getElementById to get a hold of this element in our JavaScript code. So the document is basically the HTML document, which has methods. One of them is getElementById. So we can reference this ID to get these elements into a variable that we can manipulate. So let's do that. Okay, I'm gonna define it right here. Const, and I'll separate it from the rest because it's a different type of variable. Const movies grid, right? Equals document dot get element by ID. And we do have an HTML element over here called movies grid. So we can reference that. Okay. And next, define a function called display movies. We will pass the movie data into this function. So we give it a parameter of movies. And I'm going to display it, define it right here. Function display movies. And I'm just going to give it a parameter of movies. Right. Inside this function, we're going to use the map function, the map method on the movies variable. This way we can map each movie in this array onto a new array of elements, which is creating an array of HTML elements that will represent each movie. So we're going to do movies grid.innerHTML equals movies.map. Okay. And over here, we'll use the arrow notation, although it can be hard to understand how it works at first if you're not familiar with it, but it helps us write code in a more concise way. And we're using movies grid.innerHTML because this element right here, it has an inner HTML property, which is currently empty. But if you access that, now that it's a variable, if you can just access that, then we can set these into something else, which will provide it with some content that will display something. So then write the image element that each movie should map to and set its source to be the image base URL plus each movie's poster path. So we'll just do this. And as you can see, there are backticks that wrap around the image element. And there's a special syntax right here, $, curly braces with this variable, and then $, curly braces for another movie.poster path. So what's happening here is that we're writing this as a long string. So this right here is one string. It's basically the same as these, just a bunch of characters, except that we are referencing variables which has values stored inside of them. So using this syntax will allow us to reference a variable inside of a string and create the string with the value that's stored inside of that variable, instead of just creating a string with that variable's name. So let's do that. And the map function, with the map function, we need to define just a local variable, just a name over here to represent each single element within this array, right? So for each movie, we're gonna map it to an image element. Okay, and then its source is going to be $sign image base URL $sign movie poster path. And we know this is the key that we're looking for, because once you test with the API code, you can see that this is the name of the key that would give us this value. So we can just use that and write that. Okay. All right, and to close that. All right, seems fine. Okay. And then at the end, we're going to add dot join with an empty string inside. This makes it so that the result of the mapping is converted from an array of strings into one very long strings. Because the map function, it always returns you with an array. So for each movie, it generates this string. So we have an array of strings. But for the inner HTML of these elements, it actually needs to take one long string instead of many strings. That's just kind of the way it is. So we use dot join, so that all of these code generating an array of strings. This array of strings will have all of these elements joined together with nothing separating them. Okay, so it becomes one long string. So we add that. Okay. And now we'll code this function and display the fetched movies. We can do so by adding an extra line of code in the function that we defined earlier, right after storing the movie data. So we'll pass this movie data into the new function. So right here, instead of console log movies, we will just do display movies. And since we are just displaying them, we don't need to use console log anymore. Okay, so now I save that and I preview it again. Seems like there's a problem. Each movie, okay. Get rid of that parenthesis, even though it doesn't matter. Image source is, oh yeah, I'm missing quotation marks right here. Yeah, so earlier it's kind of just like not including the quotation marks. Initially, I kind of feel like I didn't need those because there's already quotation marks, but I was kind of subconsciously thinking wrong, because when you include these, it's really just that this string will have whatever is inside of here, right? So when you have src equals all that stuff without a quotation mark, this attribute gets confused because it always needs these quotation marks to realize that what's in here itself is a string. So this is a long string, and then we also want what's in here to be a string. So now we save that. Now we can see that we have all the movie posters, exactly 20 movies that we just got. Okay. Next, we'll display the title and rating for each movie as well. From the console, something you could see earlier, you can see that the movie data contains the title right here and a vote average, as you can see right here, which are just the movie title and rating, which is exactly what we need. So we can add those to the code that we wrote. We're using h1 for the title and a paragraph for the rating. Okay, so this maps onto this, and then into each image, I will use, okay, so also make sure this is included inside the text. Okay, I'm going to use playback for the movie rating, and then we had add a star emoji to just model after the actual website. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy these. Make sure everything is enclosed within this backtick. And then also H1 for movie title. All right. And this is the same syntax from earlier, where this right here is a variable. It stores the actual movie title. So we have to use this syntax to reference what's inside of this variable instead of just literally the words movie title. Okay. All right. So now we'll preview our page again. Okay, and now we have the movie poster, rating, and title. Movie poster, rating, and title. So even though it's a little messy, but everything is there. Okay. Next, we will add layout to the movie grid. For our website, we only need to have one very simple grid view of the movies. So you can just use a CSS grid for the main layout. Here are two short videos that you can watch to learn a little bit more about CSS grid, and you can watch that at any time. Now, before we add the layout we want, let's put all the individual HTML elements for each movie into a div tag and give it a class of movie card. This way, all of these things will be grouped together by each movie card, so that the information can actually be kind of going into individual places on the grid. Okay, so we just add that. If class equals card close. Right. So we use a class over here because we're going to reference all of these divs later on with CSS, and we cannot use ID because there are multiple ones of these, and ID has to be unique. And class is basically an ID for multiple elements. Okay, now that all these elements are grouped by individual div tags, we can put them into a grid. Okay, so everything seems fine. And you see, putting things inside a grid actually changes its layout a little bit, because div tags actually take up all the space that's available within this web page. Okay, so with the movies grid, we're going to the CSS file and just add these. Make sure we save. So adding this right here, a little bit of what it does, it changes this div right here into a grid display. And then we'll use grid template columns so that there are so many columns, and it basically fits all of the data, fits all of the content that is able to fit based on these criteria to display all of these movie posters. So now you can see that instead of being in a long column like earlier, now we have kind of a grid that's keeping these movies, even though there's a little overlap. And specifically about what this syntax exactly means, it might take a while for you to kind of understand, but if you would like, you can always go to this link and then reference the official documentation to understand what this what this means, what this does, and there's also examples here that you can see. But for now, for our purposes, you can just copy this and just kind of give it a decent layout. So now we will add this code also to your CSS to give the posters better spacing. So we're just adding a grid gap right here into the movies grid, so that all the grids, they should have gaps in between them. Let's just add these movie card for this image. For each image, we want the width to be 100%. So without adding this, I think the grid gap wouldn't even show. Let's just add that. There we go. And now we can also see the grid gap. It was obscured earlier because the images were overlapping. So what this code does is just making sure that all the images, they take up all the available space, kind of distributed for each of the column, no more, no less, so that they won't just be overlapping on top of each other anymore. Okay, now that's looking better. And then we can just go into implementing the movie search functionality. Now that we have this movie grid, let's build out the search functionality and see our search results populate the display. To do this, let's first refer to the documentation for TMDB again, the TMDB API, and then look up the movie search section. This is what you would do anytime you're working with the API that you're not familiar with. You can look at all of their categories, and then since within the search category, you can search for movies. We just look at how it works. So with a definition, you need to give it for the query string, right? Which is pretty much just these, or right here. For the query string that you need to give it, you have to provide your API key, and optionally you can provide the language. And you're also required to pass a text query to search. This value should be URI encoded. Don't have to worry about that. And then page, all these different properties, they're all optional. So by default, they all have their default values. So now that we know the API, I guess the query URL looks like this, and we can also go to this try it out to see that we just need a base URL plus this thing, and then provide it with a query string, which in our case we can just use API key. We don't have to give all these, and then we need to give it a query, which it doesn't show right here because we added it. Let's suppose our API. Let me just get the API key. Let's add it right here, and then query, let's say admin. And then you could try to send request, but for me, it's not working with the website. What I'm gonna do is just copy this into the address bar again, and then it gives me the data. And now it gives me the Batman, gives me Batman Begins, and again, it's giving me the search results for the query string Batman. So now we know that if you can create these query URL strings for our API request, then our website will be able to do search. Okay. So next, we're going to define a function called search movies. And with that, we'll just give it a parameter of query to make this function make the API request. We can actually do so just by copying our fetch movies now playing function and simply changing the request URL. Okay, and as you can see, we can just copy that because the API, I guess the query URL, they're very similar, and except for this right here, if we refer back to it again, we're going to add search/movie quotation mark. Okay, yeah, quotation mark is already there. /search/movie. I just want to say right here, change that, and then we supply our API key, and on top of that, we also need to add query somewhere in there. We can ignore the other language or adults and all that. We'll just use in query equals, okay? And instead of Batman, we'll make it dynamic. In query equals. So it changes function name, search movies with a query. So now this query is going to be a string that we're passing, for example, Batman or anything. And with this query, which is actually the word query, is going to reference the variable query, which will store whatever that actual query is. Okay. So we'll check query equals. Okay, it seems like if we didn't have quotation marks in here, it would be fine. That seemed to work with their API. If I have Batman here, it works. If I have Batman in quotation mark again, it also works. So that's not a problem. Okay, besides that, it all seems fine. All right, we can test the result of this function by removing the line where we call the fetch movie is not playing function and calling this function instead. So let's just passing Batman to this function as an example. All right, we'll remove this line. And like shown right here, we'll just write at the bottom, code this function and pass it Batman. Now we'll see. Seems like there's an issue. Search movies, explore movies. May have messed up somewhere. Oh, I had an extra slash. Oh, something I'm supposed to have all that, right? There we go. Yeah, I thought it looked right earlier. But it's base URL search movie. Okay, base URL search movie. And now with the query string, just a string Batman, we can actually see all these results, which is great. All right. So now we just need to be able to allow the user to type something into the search bar and see the search results. So let's use our input field to retrieve the search query. To do so, we need to first access our input element with document.element by ID. So we'll just write that in our code. Const, and also we'll remove that since it's just code for testing. Const search input equals document get element by ID, and then we define this ID to be search input, so we'll just use that. Okay, now that we can use this element in our code, we can easily retrieve whatever the user types into it by accessing its value property. But we also need to retrieve it every time the user presses enter. So we need to define a function to do so and call this function repeatedly. Let's define a function called handle search form submit and give it a parameter of event. We will later use this function to let the form elements help us trigger events whenever the user presses enter to submit the form. And this itself is actually the events that this is referring to. So let's just do that. I'm going to define it down here. Function handle search for submit, and this parameter is gonna be event. Okay. Inside this function, we can retrieve what the user types into the input element with its value property and store it in a variable called search query. We also have to add event that prevent defaults to our code because the default behavior for form submission is refreshing the web page, which removes the search results. And I can demonstrate that real quick. Search query equals, I'm going to be referencing this element right here. Search input the value. Okay. All right. So how about actually we'll have to write some more stuff before I can demonstrate that. But let me just add that event prevent defaults. All right. So don't forget it later. We will call the search movies function and passing our search query, right? In here, whenever this function is called, we want to get the search query from the inputs field and then pass the search query, which is just a string, into this function that we define and then display movies. So let's do that. Movies equals search movies search query. All right, everything looks great. This is going to return us actually I think I may have missed something. I hope that wasn't confusing. Actually, the search movies function actually has display movies inside, so we shouldn't need to call that again. Okay, I'm just gonna leave that. I think I may have forgot that myself. Don't have to do this. This is not correct. We'll just do this. That'll be all. All right. And then put that in here. Might as well. Finally, we need to let the form element code this function with add event listener. And also, we will still code the fetch movies now playing function so that when our web page is first loaded, now playing movies are displayed. So for this search form, we will use this to add an event listener, which listens to submit, which is when the user presses enter when they focus on the after they have typed something into the input field. And then this function will be executed because it's passed into this admin listener. Search form. I think I may have missed the part where we're also creating an HTML element to reference the search form. Okay. Yeah, I definitely missed that. So we'll just do that real quick. Const search form equals documents get element by ID, and this ID here that we define is the search form. So we just do this search form. Okay. And now reference that search form add event listener submit. We're passing the function and those search form settings. And at the end, because there's nothing because we haven't fetched the movies. So we'll just call fetch movies not playing. Okay, so now we have the movies that are now playing. And then if we search something again, all of the results are also displayed just like that. Very simple. We press enter, and then this event listener listens to the submit, calls this function, prevents default. So let me also demonstrate what happens if you don't have that. If I do Batman, as you can see, the Batman shows up just for a split second, and then the page reloads. So that's why we need a prevent default right here, and then everything is kept. Okay. All right, so now we'll just add CSS styling and finishing touches. Okay, so now that we have all the core functionalities complete, we can add some styling to make it look more similar to the actual IMDb website. In the search bar, we'll make up the IMDb logo with the heading and some CSS. So we'll just add one heading right here. Okay. At the top of the search bar. And there's a shorthand here as well. If you want to give it an ID, you can do search bar. That's it. And then inside we'll just do IMDb. Great. Looks good. And then we'll just add this code with the search bar, which right here doesn't have any styling at all. We'll just add these. The search bar will give you the margin left of 20 view width. That's just kind of eyeballing over that would be kind of appropriate. And I want to put all of that code above all of these, just because visually the search bar is above the movie screen. So I like to keep things kind of consistent in some way. Okay. So the search bar, right? So the entire search bar, I'm gonna give it a margin left, 20 view width. The view width, basically 20 view width means that 20% of the available, the entire view width. So whatever space there is, you're just gonna take 20% of it and then make a margin. And then we'll add, we'll make a display flex so that inside of these, the IMDb and the search form, they can go into a row. And then we'll use align icon center as well. Okay, so now you can kind of see that these are going kind of just going in a row. It wasn't before. So actually I can maybe put it side by side to let it show more easily. If I get rid of that, this is taking up all the space. This is taking up this right here, a new line. And add that. Now they're going to a row together. And I don't know why it wasn't down here before, probably because I typed too fast, the live preview getting updated. So now since they are aligned at the center, in the vertical direction, they are parallel. Okay. So now with the search bar, the H1, we're going to add some more code to make it actually look like the IMDb logo right here, which wouldn't be too hard. So the font size, I'll make it kind of 22 pixels. Search bar H1. I'm just gonna reference it like that, so that within the search bar, whatever is enclosed in the search bar, the H1 will be affected. Since there's only one, we don't have to worry too much. The font size, just make 22 pixels. Okay. And I'll put it side by side again to check that. 22 pixels. Okay, it's not as big anymore. And I'll give it a font family impact. I tested this myself, and it seems to be the correct font that they're actually using. Okay, pretty good, just like that. And then I'll give it a background color, and let's take a close look. That's actually background color Pong F4C518. There we go. It's seems like the same exact color. And I actually found that color using this extension. text color picker. You can just use this, click here, and basically go to anything, and it will give you the exact value that you need to get that exact color. So yeah, as you can see, that's pretty much the same, except one digit difference. But it's pretty much the same. Over here, same thing. All right. Okay. And then add a little more padding because it looks very skinny. So add some more padding. And after my testing, it also looks to be something like this. Now that looks a lot more like it. And then just make it have rounded corners like that. And we'll just do border radius, 5 pixels. And that looks great. Okay. And we'll modify the input field to finish up styling the search bar. So we're doing similar syntax right here to for our selector. Just do these right here, and I'm just gonna type it all out. It's gonna be margin left 20 pixels, height 2 pixels, width 700 pixels, and border radius 5 pixels to give it rounded corners. Now let's do it again. It's looking a little bit better. Okay. All right, seems to make sense. All right. Then let's move on to the main layout. Let's give our web page an off black background. Give the movie titles white color and make movie script a little more narrow. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy all these to the CSS, and actually I will copy the body and keep it at the top. I like to keep body at the top if I ever reference it because it encompasses everything. So I give a hierarchy in a vertical order, kind of. So with that, we have, as a example, we have an off black background. It's still kind of see the text, but we want to change the text color as well. And we'll just do right here with the movie grid. Actually, we already have those. We'll just add this. We'll give the text white color and make it more narrow, and then give it some margin. So this margin is with this syntax that says in the top and bottom direction is going to be 2rem, and 2rem is just like a relative distance. And then auto, this makes it so that it's focused on the center. This is one way to center something in some type of way. If it's auto, it just kind of goes in the very center of the whole page. If it's 2rem auto, it is 2rem top down, and then auto left right. So it's horizontally centered. And we'll check it again. It looks pretty good. And looks like 20 over here, 20 view width for this is a little much. So I might want to change that. Okay, 10 view width. That looks a lot better. Let me try again. 20 is looking like that. Let's definitely way off. Let's change it to 10. That's fine. And then actually to keep it consistent, I'll give it 2rem for a top and bottom margin, and then on the right I'll give it 0, and then 2rem on the bottom, and then 10 with the left. Actually, that's not consistent. It's 20 is more like it. I'm not sure why there is some extra margin right here. It was 20, it should have been fine. I'm really not sure what's pushing it so far out. Okay, it's the search bar. It somehow takes up the search bar and wait. Oh, I don't know how I gave it a search bar like that. I don't know. I don't even know when I did that. It doesn't need that. That's why it was having like an extra margin like that, because it's just referencing everything that has this ID, taking up all the margin, left margin. Now that looks fine. Okay, and our web page is looking a lot better. All right. So we'll give the movie cards dark gray background. We'll modify the movie title, give the rating a light gray color, and add a small space after the rating star. Okay, and we'll just type that out. So for the movie card image, it's with 100%. That's fine. For the movie card itself, it's gonna be display flex. It's gonna be display flex right here. Actually, I didn't make a display flex. Oh, it doesn't necessarily have to be, because everything just kind of goes into the columns nicely. So we don't have to do additional styling. It seems like it's probably flex display right here, but just having a poster go here, go here, kind of go here, we wouldn't need to use a flex box. Okay, so we'll just make it background 1A1A1. And I also found this value with the hex color picker right here after referencing their website. I checked the color right here and got the exact same color. And I'll keep that for the radius. So that these little things, they have a very tiny border radius. Now they have a very tiny curve right here, just like a little bit of what they have right here. Okay. Now the H1, the title, it's gonna have a little padding on the left, 2 pixels. Font size, I'll make it 18, and font family, it's gonna be Arial, and font weight, it's gonna be lighter. All right, so that looks very close to what they have right here, right? And for the rating, we'll give it a light gray color and pretty much the same. I'm just gonna copy these and modify. So it's in a paragraph. Its font size is just fine. I need to change. Okay, that's that. Oh, we need to give it a color that's light gray. Okay, that looks better. Awesome. And then space after the little star. Okay, right now it seems like a little tight, so we add a space right here. And there we go, that's much better. Just look at it, a tiny space. Okay, that looks fine to me. All right, so we want to add one more thing, the category title, so the users know what category of movies they're looking at. We'll add another H1 and give it an idea of category title. We'll make it so that when a web page first loads, it says now playing movies. And when the movie searches for something, it says search results. To change the content of an element based on events, we will need to use JavaScript again. And to keep our code readable and clean, we'll still wrap it inside a div tag. So let's do that. For the div tag, and then inside we'll just have an H1, and its title is going to be ID is going to be category title, right? And then inside we can just make it select now, playing movies. And we can kind of see that right here. And real quick, we can just give it some styling. I'll just copy these. We do some left margin and give it a color. Color that's should be the same as this color right here. And since it's somewhere in the middle, I'll just add it right above movie grid. Okay, so if I ever want to modify, if I'm done with the project, right, but if I want to go back and modify the code, I can just kind of logically assume, okay, the category title will be somewhere above the movie grid, somewhere below search bar, so I can find all the rules very easily. If you can't find the rules very easily, you will kind of have to struggle, going through maybe a large file and then just look for that file, look for that rule. This just makes it a little easier. So now we have that. It's looking great, pretty much just like these titles, and I like that a lot. And then we'll use code to change text when the search is performed. We'll define another variable called category title here. I'm just gonna copy this document, get it by ID, category title. And we just add this line of code in this function. Whenever a search is performed, we change this inner HTML, which is the text that it contains, to search results. Okay, now let's test that. Great, easy, just like that. Awesome. And that's it. Now, the last thing we have to do to finish our project is to comply with the attribution clause of TMDB's terms of service, which is that we have to use their service to identify our use of their API and then put this line of text right here. So we just need to add their logo, which is any one of these, into our project. And I like this one, so I saved it, and we'll just add another image and paragraph at the bottom of our web page. We can save this image, rename it as logo.svg, and then add it into the project. I'm just gonna show that. Save image as logo.svg, and I'll just save it in downloads. So once you have that, you can go to your Explorer, which you can do that by Ctrl+Shift+E and look at your folder. And then I can drag and drop. Oh, try and do this. I can drag and drop that into the folder just like that, or you can do so any other way that you would like. Right, so now that we have that, we can take it and create an image tag right there, just like that. And I'll just copy these. It's pretty simple. Down below the movie grid. Okay. Oh, copy the wrong thing. All right. So now we have a div. That's footer. That's a footer. And then an image tag. And we also keep an alt attribute and give it something whenever we could for accessibility. This product uses, okay, that's just their line, and that's great. So now with that, boom, we have all of these, and then the text, right? It's very huge. So we'll style it with some CSS. And I'll very simply just add all of these in there, somewhere on the bottom, is it below everything, okay? Now it's display flex, justify content center, so that All right, so after this is defined with only this much width, and then this having this much content, there is leftover space. With that leftover space, we center everything into the center within this footer. Okay, and then give that some font, some margin to get away from this image. That looks much better. And that's it. We're done with our project. And with that, you can commit and push to GitHub. In our course portal, I added this image to show you how to do it. And we can just do initial commits. And before you commit, actually make sure to save all of your file. I'm doing Control S right now, because if you do not save your file, live preview will still show you the changes that you made with your code, but it actually won't be detected with GitHub Desktop unless you actually save your file. So once your files are saved, you can see all your changes. And then we just do the commit message, commit to main, push origin. And then if you go back to this, you should see that everything you have is right here. Your code is right here. And now everything you have is right here. To deploy our website, we can just go to settings, pages, and then do main, save. With that, GitHub Pages is going to host your page from your repository, and then it will tell you that your GitHub Pages site is currently being built from the main branch. So once you give it a second, your project is going to be hosted, and then you'll be able to share that link with anybody, and then you'll be able to see your website. And that's it. That's it for our project. And once you get your link that you have, you can use this. Go to your README, click this icon, and then just change the content so that it will show you this right here. Let me see. Okay, this is not done yet. And actually, I'm going to take some time and implement another feature actually to make it a lot better. Okay, I'm going to allow the user to actually click on these movie titles and then be able to be redirected to their IMDb page. So to do that, first I need to be able to somehow use their API to get away, to lead to IMDb, right? Because I have all this movie data. I could somehow find a way to just lead to IMDb, and then I guess search for this movie if I connect IMDb's API, but that's a lot of work. I'm going to find a way that makes it a lot easier. And I think there is, they actually have an external IDs that allows us to reference the movie's ID, each movie's ID in each of these websites. So for IMDb as well, we can actually use the TMDB API to get these movie IDs in the IMDb database. So I'm going to go into movies and get external ID. Okay. So with that, we can also try. Say I have a movie, I remember, let me get my API key in there. I'm not supposed to try it. Yes, I remember we were looking at a movie that's 550, and then if I try this link, it'll give me Fight Club, right? Fight Club IMDb ID is actually this. So now that I have this, I believe there is a way I can go to IMDb and then just somehow use that ID to go to their this movies page. For example, we can also see that there is a similar ID right here. So pretty much they just use their own movie IDs to create these URLs. So if I can modify that, I'll also be able to reference these individual movies, right? So I'm going to somehow do that. So the first thing, I'm going to define a function that allows me to retrieve the IMDb ID. Okay, so function get IMDb ID. Okay, so for whatever movie that I have fetched with their API, I'm just gonna pass in that movie ID. Okay, this movie ID that we're passing is gonna be the TMDB ID, right? So that will allow us to actually get the IMDb ID. So I'm pretty sure it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, get external ID. We can just do get movie / movie ID / external IDs. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy all of these right here. Actually, just this, and then since I'm not familiar with that particular, I guess, API search, I'm just going to log out. Okay, we also need to make it async here because this is asynchronous. It needs to take time to wait for these. Make sure it has async await. So I'm going to just log this out and try to see what is the response. Console.log JSON response. Okay, so don't forget to change this right here. We got the base URL, and then we do /movie /movie ID. Okay, external IDs, right? And then again, put the question mark, API key, no query. We don't need the query right here. All right, /movie ID. Okay, so this movie ID, it actually needs to be the variable that we are referencing. So I'm just gonna change that right here. Right. So whatever movie ID that we're passing, we should be getting a response somehow, and then we'll see what the response is. So I'm just gonna try that real quick. Yeah, IMDb ID 550. Let's see what it gives me. And since it's logging into a console, we can just check. Okay, now it gave me an object. Now it's giving me the same information. It gives me Facebook ID, which is pretty much the name. Okay, yeah. I guess you can use this ID to go to Facebook and find Fight Club's page. But we want this IMDb ID, right? TT and then the string of digits. So we want to take this IMDb ID and use that, right? So we want to take this function and make it just give us the ID, and then we'll use that later. So we'll just return JSON response dot well, it was well, get that back. Let's check what is the key for that. Okay, we have the IMDb ID. Okay, we need to get that. We just need this function to return JSON response that we need to get the IMDb ID. Okay, so I'm just going to try it again to make sure this function is working fine. There's no console log here. We just console log what we get. Okay. So now we have this. This is actually async, but we should be able to use that. All right. So now we have this function that will give us the IMDb ID for each movie given the TMDB ID. We can use that to turn each of these movie cards into a link by using the A tag. Right, we'll just wrap that around the all of these things inside the moving car, and then the href, we'll just let that reference each movie's IMDb page URL. And as you can see, this is like the bare minimum that we need to just look at these movies page, their page URL / title / ID. Very simple. I'm just gonna copy that format right here, and this will be where we will be modifying that URL. And let's not forget to close this A tag. And you might think that this is where we code this function. Get IMDb ID. And then maybe we'll pass in that ID or something like that, and then it'll give us that correct URL. But actually, if we go and test it, which you can see these cars have turned into links. If we click that, it will actually give us this, which is because this is an async function, and this is not. So while the browser is trying to interpret all of these HTML, it doesn't wait for these right here, which it's a problem. It doesn't wait until it's resolved before just trying to interpret this string as into HTML. So that's what we're getting right there. Every single A tag actually has just a promise instead of the actual value that we want. So to resolve that, we just can't have like an async function call right here. So what we have to do is actually modify all of this data. And for each movie, we need to somehow get a new field where we can access, so that we can just access that movie's IMDb ID right here. And to do that, we need to go back into this function and then modify these results, so that for this movies array, we basically need to give it a new, like, converted array, where when we're passing in, we'll have that new data, including the IMDb ID, using this function call. So the way we do that is by using again await, and then we'll do promise.all, because we're going to be making multiple of these async calls, and they all need to be resolved, right? So that right here, we'll take this JSON response, and of those results, we're gonna, for this results array, which is just the movie data, we're gonna map that, and then which what we do right here is also gonna have to be async, because we will be calling this function right here. And for basically each movie, right, and we use the arrow function again, we're gonna map that into a new object, right? So this object is also gonna have ID, which is just that movie's ID, and then it's gonna have let me make sure I close these. Fixing this. Here. Okay, there we go. All right. So for the movie, we need to have a title, and this is going to be movie title, and then we'll just keep all the property names the same. So we're going to have poster path. It's going to be movie.poster path. Then average. Movie.poster average. And the last thing that we need right here is we call it IMDb ID. And that is where we'll finally do a wait and then get IMDb ID. We're passing the movie's ID. We need to do a wait again, because this is asynchronous, and because we're doing a wait right here. Then this function, this error function itself, needs to be asynchronous. right? So with all that, right now, these movies array will have basically an array of these objects. So now they're going to be passed into this function, and passing in here, we'll also access ads movie data the ID. So now going back in here, we can finally see our website is working great. But also, when we're searching movies, we also want them to be able to do the same, right? So we'll just pretty simply copy all of these, right? Since they have same code in here, we'll just copy that. So now they should have same results. Not yet. Let me see what I'm missing here. Search movies. This will respond. Okay. Display movies. This is working for sure. Again. Oh, this is okay. All right, so it's working just fine like that. So final thing that we have to do is just modifying the CSS a little bit so that it doesn't look like this, right? It's not exactly pretty. So for the movie card, I'm gonna go in there and then add another CSS group, right? Inside the movie card, I don't want a tags to have the underline, so I can just do text diversion none. Okay, that's great. And then I'll just make it have light gray color. There we go. So now our IMDb clone website is looking great. And that's it. Functions just like the real website. You're able to view your website and then have it look pretty much the same. Great. I hope you enjoy this video, and make sure to keep up with our contents and then learn a lot more web dev in the coming videos. Thank you.